all things Jira, and I'm back with another story. Now, today's story is about the Yuba County Five. Now, this story is considered to be America's Dyatlov Pass. And if you remember, that was one of the first true crime type videos I did. It was about some Russian hikers that were killed under mysterious circumstances. Before I get into the story, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, and please share. Now, this story is about 5 young men from Yuba County, California. Now, this story takes place in 1978. These 5 men were best friends. They did everything together. Some of them even worked together. They were all friends, and they all had varying degrees of mental disabilities. They were all very well liked and very well respected in their community. First, we have Jack Hewitt, who was 24. He was the youngest of the group. He was really uncomfortable in social situations, but when he was with his friends, he was fine. He had a speech impediment, and he was unable to read, write, or dial a phone on his own. And he did not like to stay anywhere overnight. He always wanted to be back home and in his own bed at night. Then there was Ted Weir. Now, he was 32 years old. He was the oldest of the group, and he acted like a big brother to Jack. He would help him out with doing things. He would make phone calls for him if he needed to. Ted would take care of those types of things for him. Now, Ted's brother said that he lacked common sense, and he brought up a story that one time Ted purchased $100 worth of pencils for no reason at all. There was William Sterling. He was 29 years old, and he was said to be very religious. And he worked at Beale Air Force Base as a dishwasher. But his mother actually made him quit that job because she found out that some of the airmen would get him drunk and steal his money. So she made him quit. Now, William's family, they owned a cabin in the woods, and he would go out to the cabin with his family. He would fish and do things like that, but he would never stay overnight. He did not want to stay overnight in the woods. There was Jack Madruga. He was 30 years old. He was an Army veteran. He was discharged shortly after he enlisted when the military found out that his IQ wasn't high enough to function as a military member. He had a driver's license, he had his own car, and he could manage his own money, and he worked as a dishwasher as well. And then there was Gary Matthias. He was 25 years old, and he worked part-time as an assistant gardener, I believe, for his stepfather. Now, Gary Matthias was also an Army veteran. And he was discharged after 2 years because of drug use and some mental health issues that they found when he was overseas. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and he began receiving VA disability. Now, Gary was the most highly functioning of the group unless he was in some type of stressful situation. Now, all of these young men loved basketball. They loved to watch games on TV, to go to games, and they also played on the team themselves. I believe it was for the Special Olympics. So in February of 1978, on February 25th, they were supposed to have a basketball tournament that they were all supposed to play in. Now, prior to this basketball tournament, they found out that on February 24th, their favorite basketball team, UC Davis, was playing a game in Chico, California. So they decided they were going to go to this game in Chico, California, and they would come back home that night in enough time to get some rest and be able to play in their own tournament on the 25th. So they all got together. Jack Madruga drove his car, and they all rode to Chico together to go to the game. Now, there were plenty of people witnessed the boys at the game. Once they left the game, on their way home, they stopped at a gas station. Now, they stopped at this gas station and they purchased snacks, some sodas, and milk. Now, the gas station owner, he remembered specifically seeing them because they came in at around 10 o'clock. He was just getting ready to close the gas station, and he had to wait for them to make all of their purchases and leave. So he specifically remembered these 5 young men coming into the store. So the night went on, and none of the young men returned home. So as it got later and later, their parents started to worry. They started to call each other, trying to find out had anyone heard from these men. The next morning came, and once all the parents realized now it's the next morning, it's closer to their basketball game, they would never have missed the game. They would never have been late coming home to get ready for the game. So they decided to call the police. The police set out a search. They searched in their local area, and they searched around Chico as well. That was how they found out that the boys did get to the game, how the boys left the game and went to that gas station. Now, from the point of the gas station, no one else had seen them. So they decided to widen their search a little bit. On February the 28th, they found Jack Madruga's car about 70 miles from Chico, California, and it was not in the direction of their home in Yuba County. They found their car on a dirt road. Now, the car was covered in snow, but it was not stuck in the snow. They managed to get the door open. The only thing inside the car were the wrappers from the snacks that they had purchased at that gas station. The keys weren't in the car. The keys weren't in the ignition or anywhere else in the car. They had to hotwire the car. When they hotwired the car started right up, so the police noticed that there were no type of mechanical issues going on with the car. So they could only conclude that for some reason the men drove up this dirt road, stopped, parked the car, and got out and walked for some reason. But they couldn't figure out why. It had been snowing, so any footprints that had been there were covered up by this new snow. The police stated that this was a hard road to travel. It wasn't directly off the interstate. So they stated that in order to get to this dirt road, you would have to know that it was there. It wasn't a road that you could really get lost and just end up on. It was also a really bumpy road. It was very rough terrain, and they noticed there were no scratches under the undercarriage of the car. So they concluded that whoever drove the car up this dirt road had to have known where they were going and how to manage, because they were able to manage that road in the dark without scratching up the undercarriage of the car. So they searched around. They didn't find any signs of any of the men, and a snowstorm came through. So they had to cancel the search. Unfortunately, because of this time of year and where this was located, there was a lot of snow. So they actually had to end the search and wait for the snow to melt. Because of the time of year it was, the snow may not have melted until early spring. At this point, they could no longer search, so they were just taking tips and trying to locate people that had seen the men. Now, one tip came from a Joseph Jones. He was 55 years old, and he stated that he had traveled up that same area on February the 24th at about 5 p.m. He said he was going to take his wife and daughter to camp in that area, and he went out there around 5 p.m. to check out the roads and see if it was going to be good enough for them to travel up that evening. He said when he got up there, his car actually got stuck in the snow, so he had to get out and try to dig his car out. He stated that it was so hard to try to get the car out of the snow, he actually had a heart attack while he was out there. He said during his heart attack, he decided to get back in the car. He started the car and turned the heat on and just sat there all night. He didn't know of any other way to get help. And this is 1978, so that it's not like he had a cell phone or anything like that. So he sat in the car all night. He said at some point during the night, I'm not sure if he knew exactly what time it was, but he said at some point during the night, he started to hear voices. He said he got up, looked out the window, and he saw two cars. He gave a description of the cars that he saw. So one car matched the description of Jack Madruga's Mercury Montego. The other was a pickup truck. He said there were headlights on the pickup truck, and he saw 5 men walking, and there was also a woman carrying a baby wrapped up in blankets. He said he saw them walking. He was about 150 feet away from where they were. He said he started to walk towards them. He started calling their name, but the wind was blowing, it was snowing, so he tried to just get closer and closer to them and yell a little louder because he needed help. He said as he got closer, he realized that they could not hear him. They continued to walk, and at some point, the pickup truck pulled away, and he no longer could see the 5 men or the women. He said the sun came up, and he decided to just keep walking down the dirt road to find help himself. So he eventually did find help. He got to the hospital, and a doctor diagnosed that he did have a heart attack that night. Now later on, Joseph's stories slightly changed. He still said he saw the 5 young men. He still said he saw the woman with the baby. But a few times he had said that he didn't wake up because he heard voices. He woke up because he heard someone knocking on his window. I think another time he said he woke up because someone had shined a flashlight into his window. So because he was having a heart attack at that time, the police speculated that he may have been hallucinating. They don't doubt that he did see something, but they're not really clear on exactly what he saw. But in every story, he did specify seeing the 5 young men plus the woman with the baby. Now, on June 4th of 1978, a group of motorcyclists were riding around in the area, and they decided to stop not very far from where Jack Madruga's car had been found. They decided to stop. So they stopped in a cul-de-sac. Now this cul-de-sac was about 20 miles away from where Jack Madruga's car had been found previously. When they stopped, they said they saw a trailer out in the distance. They started to walk over to the trailer. Now this was the type of trailer that would usually hold supplies and things like that for emergencies. So they started to walk over to the trailer. As they got closer to the trailer, they realized that there was a really bad smell coming from the trailer. They also noticed that there was a window broken out. When they saw this, they got back on their bikes, found a phone and called the authorities. So they sent out a team, a recovery team, to go out to the trailer and see what was going on. When they got to the trailer, they found lots of canned food in storage lockers. There was one locker that had been opened with cans of food in it. There was another locker that remained closed that had never been opened. They also found the body of Ted Weir in this trailer. Now, Ted Weir was laying on a bed and he was covered in about 8 sheets. He also had some of his personal belongings laying on a bedside table beside him. His pants legs were rolled up, he had gangrene on both of his legs, and he had lost about 5 toes to frostbite. He had also grown a beard. Now, based on the growth of his beard, they determined that he had been out and survived in this area from anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks before he died. Ted's cause of death was determined as a combination of starvation, exposure, and pulmonary edema. Another thing that they found at the trailer was a propane tank outside. And the authorities said that this propane tank was in working order, but it was never touched, it was never turned on. And they could have used that for heat. They also said that there were no signs of the men ever lighting a fire in the trailer to stay warm. There were plenty of books and wooden furniture and plenty of things that they could have lit on fire and kept on fire throughout that time, and they never used it. They also said that one of the storage lockers that was full of food, there was enough food in there to feed all 5 men for an entire year. Now, also in this trailer, they found the shoes of Gary Matthias. They did not find Ted's shoes in the trailer, only Gary's shoes. 2 days later, they found the bodies of William Sterling and Jack Madruga. Now, William, the only thing that was left of him were bones, and they were just found scattered along the forest grounds. Their bodies were found about 11 miles away from the trailer, but closer to where Jack Madruga's car had been found. Now, Jack, his body was found near a stream. Now, the police determined that he had died and his body had been ravaged by animals and dragged down to the stream. Now, Jack's cause of death was determined as hypothermia, and they could not determine William's cause of death because of the condition of his remains. Now, after they found the first body, they contacted the parents and requested that they not come out to the area. They didn't want any of the parents to find their children like that. But Jack, Hewitt's father, didn't listen. He came out there anyway, and he was actually the one that found his son's body. He was walking around with the rest of the searchers, and he saw Jack's jacket laying on the ground. He went over to pick up Jack's jacket, and when he did, Jack's spine fell out of the jacket. They found his teeth about 50 feet away from where they found his spine and jacket. His cause of death was undetermined. About 1/4 of a mile away from the trailer, they found a bunch of blankets and some flashlights. They couldn't determine who had these blankets and flashlights or why they had them. They were just laying out there. Authorities continued to search for a few more weeks, but eventually they called off the search. They hadn't found any new evidence anywhere of what happened, and they never found the body of Gary Matthias. So they ended the search without finding the remains of the 5th man. So there were several theories on what happened to these men over that time period, especially seeing that Ted had lived up to 6 weeks out there. So there were lots of rumors and different theories going around about what actually happened. One of the main theories was that Gary did this. Prior to his standing in the community and how everyone in Yuba County saw him, Gary actually had lots of arrests. He had spent a lot of time in mental institutions. The other young men, they had been diagnosed with different types of mental disabilities from childhood, but Gary was a little different. He actually spent his high school years in and out of institutions. Once he was actually placed in a psychiatric hospital due to a hallucinogenic trip. When you take hallucinogens at such a young age, it could permanently change your brain chemistry. And this may have been what led to his paranoid schizophrenia. So Gary spent a lot of time in and out of institutions. As he got older and he joined the military, he started to have more issues. He started to use more drugs in the military as well. There was one story that investigators noted that one time Gary went AWOL. He was found and arrested. He was placed into a jail cell. Somehow he called over some officers to his jail cell, and when they opened it up, he ran out of the cell naked and tried to run away. They grabbed him, and when they did, he punched one of the officers in the face. He tried to punch another officer, but they were able to subdue him. Now, later on, Gary would say that he only did this because he didn't like the military. He didn't want to be there any longer. And he knew if he acted this way, they would kick him out. Most people think that this was really Gary. This is really how he acted. And maybe he was just having some type of psychotic break. Now, some very old friends of Gary's had came forward and said that Gary was always violent. They also said that Gary really hated women. It was also said that all of the parents of these young men, they did not like the fact that Gary was part of the group, even though they didn't know anything about his background or his arrest. They were just really uncomfortable with him being in the group with these young men. And they were especially uncomfortable because he seemed to be the leader, the one that kind of told everyone what to do. Another theory was about the woman with the baby. A lot of times, people will use a woman or children to lure other people to rob them or kill them or something like that. So another theory was that maybe this woman was used to lure them up that dirt road. Maybe they thought they were going to help her, and maybe they were ambushed by a person or a group of people. But that doesn't really make sense because the authorities did note that there were no types of shell casings anywhere. They don't believe that any of the men died from being stabbed or gunshots or anything like that. The other theory, the last theory, was that they just got lost. That despite the authorities saying that you really can't get lost and find this particular dirt road, maybe they really did get lost. And maybe because of their mental disabilities, they were able to find that trailer, but they didn't really know how to take care of themselves. So seeing that some of the men died of starvation, it may be possible that they actually got out there and just did not know how to take care of themselves on their own in order to maintain until they were found. But honestly, because they couldn't specifically determine the cause of death for everyone, I think Ted Weir's body was the only one intact enough to really kind of determine what went on with him. Everyone else were basically just remains left, bones and that type of thing. So they really couldn't determine anything. So this story was really strange. Pretty much anything could have happened. So anyway, I thought this story was really interesting. I have no clue what happened. I would lean more to the theory of maybe they just got lost and they weren't able to take care of themselves out in the woods. But what do you think? What do you think happened? Do you think that they were simply lost? Do you think it was Gary? Or did this woman have something to do with it? Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. Make sure you like this video. Please leave a comment and please share. Subscribe to my channel if you have not. And I'll see you all back here next Wednesday and every Wednesday at 10:15. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.